Sarah's heart raced as she stared at the unfamiliar woman on her doorstep, her own donated hair framing the stranger's tear-stained face. In that moment, she realized her simple act of kindness had set in motion a chain of events that would change both their lives forever. Sarah Thompson stood before the mirror, fingers tracing the faint scar along her collarbone, a permanent reminder of the battle she had fought and won. Her reflection stared back, brown eyes searching for something indefinable in the face that had become both familiar and foreign over the past 2 years. The regrown chestnut hair, now falling past her shoulders in soft waves, was a testament to her resilience. Yet, as she gathered it into a ponytail, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. The late afternoon sun filtered through the curtains of her modest apartment, casting a warm glow on the pile of thank you cards scattered across her desk. Each one bore witness to the generosity of friends, family, and even strangers who had supported her through the darkest days of her cancer treatment. Sarah's gaze lingered on them, a bittersweet smile tugging at her lips. A gentle knock at the door pulled her from her reverie. "Come in," she called, turning away from the mirror. Dr. Michael Chun, her oncologist and now friend, stepped into the room. His presence, once a harbinger of anxiety-filled appointments, now brought a sense of comfort. "Ready for your follow-up?" he asked, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. Sarah nodded, gesturing for him to take a seat. As they went through the routine checks, the conversation flowed easily between them, a far cry from the tense clinical exchanges of the past. "Your latest scans are clear," Dr. Chun announced, his smile widening. "You're officially 2 years cancer-free, Sarah." The words, though expected, sent a ripple of emotion through her. "Thank you," she whispered, blinking back tears. "For everything, Dr. Chun leaned forward, his expression softening. "You did all the hard work. I just provided the roadmap." A comfortable silence settled between them, filled with unspoken understanding. It was Sarah who finally broke it, her voice hesitant. "I've been thinking about donating my hair, Doctor." Chun's eyebrows rose in surprise. "That's a wonderful idea. Any particular reason?" Sarah's fingers unconsciously went to her ponytail. "I remember how much it meant to me, having a wig during treatment. It was like a shield, you know? A way to feel normal when everything else was falling apart." The doctor nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You want to give that feeling to someone else?" "Yes," Sarah said, her voice growing stronger. "But it's not just that. I need to do something meaningful with this second chance I've been given. Teaching is fulfilling, but I can't shake the feeling that there's more I should be doing." Doctor Chun leaned back, studying her thoughtfully. "Sarah, you've already done so much. Your strength throughout your treatment inspired not just your students, but everyone around you. But I understand the need to find new purpose." As they discussed the logistics of hair donation, Sarah felt a spark of excitement ignite within her. It was a small step, but it felt like the beginning of something important. The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Sarah researched various organizations, finally settling on a local foundation that provided wigs to cancer patients. The day of the donation arrived, and as she sat in the salon chair, watching long strands of her hair fall to the floor, Sarah felt a mix of emotions she couldn't quite name. Lisa Hart, the foundation's coordinator, was there to receive the donation. Her warm smile and genuine enthusiasm made Sarah feel instantly at ease. "You have no idea how much this means to our recipients," Lisa said, carefully packaging the ponytail. "Each donation is a gift of confidence, of normalcy in a time of chaos." Sarah nodded, running a hand through her newly shortened hair. "I know exactly what you mean." As she left the salon, Sarah felt lighter, not just physically, but emotionally. It was as if she had left behind more than just her hair. She had shed some of the lingering weight of her cancer experience. Weeks turned into months, and life settled into a new rhythm. Sarah threw herself into her teaching with renewed vigor, drawing on her experiences to connect with her students in deeper ways. She volunteered at cancer support groups, sharing her story and offering hope to those still in the midst of their battles. Yet, there was still a part of her that felt unsettled, as if waiting for something she couldn't define. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when the call came. Sarah was grading papers in her classroom, the sounds of children playing at recess drifting through the open window. The caller ID showed the foundation's number, and Sarah answered with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Lisa's voice came through, warm but tinged with an unusual excitement. "Sarah, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "Not at all," Sarah replied, setting aside her red pen. "Is everything okay?" There was a pause, and Sarah could almost hear Lisa gathering her thoughts. "More than okay, actually. I'm calling because, well, this is a bit unusual, but we've had a request. The young woman who received the wig made from your hair, she wants to meet you." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Sarah gripped the edge of her desk, her mind reeling. "Meet me?" she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. Lisa's words came in a rush. "I know it's not our usual protocol. We typically maintain anonymity between donors and recipients. But this young woman, Emily, she's been quite persistent. She says your donation made a profound impact on her life, and she wants to thank you in person." Sarah's heart raced, a kaleidoscope of emotions swirling within her. Fear, excitement, uncertainty, they all vied for dominance. I don't know what to say," she admitted. "You don't have to decide right now," Lisa assured her. "Take some time to think about it. If you're not comfortable, we completely understand." Emily knows it's an unusual request. As the call ended, Sarah sat in stunned silence. The classroom around her, usually a source of comfort and purpose, suddenly felt small and confining. She moved to the window, watching her students play with carefree abandon. Her mind wandered to the faceless young woman who now wore her hair. What was her story? How had a simple act of donation impacted her life so significantly that she would seek out a stranger? The bell rang, signaling the end of recess. As her students filed back in, chattering and laughing, Sarah made a decision. She would meet Emily. Whatever fears or reservations she had, they paled in comparison to the potential for connection, for understanding. That evening, Sarah sat on her balcony, watching the sun dip below the horizon. She thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. The pain, the fear, the triumph. And now, this unexpected turn. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Chun. "Heard about the meeting request. How are you feeling?" Sarah smiled, grateful for his constant support. She typed back, nervous, excited. "It feels like the start of something important." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Sarah felt a sense of anticipation building within her. Whatever came next, she was ready to embrace it. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation and introspection. Sarah found herself reflecting on her cancer journey with new eyes, seeing not just the struggle, but the moments of unexpected beauty and connection. She thought of the nurses who had become like family, of fellow patients who had shared their stories and fears in the quiet hours of the night. She remembered the first day she had worn a wig, how it had given her the courage to face the world when she felt most vulnerable. Now, she was on the other side of that equation. Her hair, a part of her that had regrown, a symbol of her recovery, had become a source of strength for someone else. The thought filled her with a mix of humility and pride. The day before the scheduled meeting, Sarah visited her favorite spot in the city park. It was a small bench overlooking a pond where she had often come to find peace during her treatment. As she sat there, watching the ducks glide across the water, she felt a sense of coming full circle. "You seem deep in thought," a voice said, startling her from her reverie. Sarah looked up to see an elderly woman smiling down at her. "Mind if I join you?" "Not at all," Sarah replied, moving over to make room. The woman sat with a contented sigh. "I come here every day," she said, her eyes twinkling. "There's something magical about this spot, don't you think?" Sarah nodded, feeling an instant connection with this stranger. "It's where I came to find hope," she said softly. The woman turned to her, curiosity in her gaze. "And did you find it?" A slow smile spread across Sarah's face. "I did. And now I think I might be able to give some of that hope back." As they sat in companionable silence, watching the sun's reflection shimmer on the water, Sarah felt a sense of peace settle over her. Whatever tomorrow brought, she was ready to face it with an open heart. The morning of the meeting dawned crisp and clear, the autumn air carrying a hint of anticipation. Sarah stood at her kitchen window, cradling a mug of steaming coffee, her thoughts a swirling mix of excitement and apprehension. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, each second bringing her closer to an encounter that felt both inevitable and surreal. A soft chime from her phone drew her attention. It was a text from Lisa. "Everything's set for 11 a.m. at the community center. Emily's looking forward to meeting you. Remember, there's no pressure. Just be yourself." Sarah smiled, grateful for Lisa's thoughtfulness. She typed back a quick thank you, then set her phone aside, determined to center herself before the meeting. As she dressed, Sarah caught sight of herself in the mirror. The woman staring back at her was a far cry from the scared, vulnerable patient she had been 2 years ago. Her hair, now cut into a stylish bob, framed a face that looked older, yes, but also wiser, more at peace. She touched the scar on her collarbone, a gesture that had become almost ritualistic, a reminder of how far she'd come. The drive to the community center was a blur of familiar streets and unfamiliar emotions. Sarah found herself gripping the steering wheel tightly, her mind racing with questions. What would Emily be? How would it feel to see her own hair on someone else? What if the meeting didn't live up to Emily's expectations? She arrived early, parking her car in the nearly empty lot. The community center, a modern building of glass and brick, stood before her, its doors seeming both welcoming and intimidating. Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever lay ahead. Inside, the center buzzed with quiet activity. A yoga class was just letting out, participants chatting softly as they rolled up their mats. The smell of fresh coffee wafted from a small cafe in the corner. It all felt so normal, so everyday, in stark contrast to the momentous occasion Sarah was about to experience. Lisa met her in the lobby, her warm smile instantly putting Sarah at ease. "How are you feeling?" she asked, leading Sarah down a hallway. "Nervous," Sarah admitted, "but ready, I think." They stopped outside a small meeting room. Lisa turned to Sarah, her expression serious. "Emily's inside. She's just as nervous as you are. Remember, this is a gift you've both given each other. There's no right or wrong way for this to go." Sarah nodded, taking a final deep breath. "Okay, I'm ready." As Lisa opened the door, Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. And then, suddenly, she was face to face with Emily. The young woman who stood before her was not what Sarah had expected, though she realized she hadn't known what to expect. Emily was tall and slender, with a dancer's grace. Her skin was pale, with a smattering of freckles across her nose. And her hair, Sarah's hair, fell in soft waves around her face, framing warm brown eyes that were currently wide with emotion. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, the air thick with unspoken words. Then Emily stepped forward, her hand outstretched. "Hi," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm Emily. I can't believe you're really here." Sarah took her hand, feeling the slight tremor in Emily's grip. "Hi, Emily. I'm Sarah. It's wonderful to meet you." They sat down, Lisa quietly excusing herself to give them privacy. An awkward silence fell, both women unsure where to begin. It was Emily who finally broke the ice. "I'm sorry if this is weird," she said, a nervous laugh escaping her. I needed to thank you. In person. Your hair, your donation. It meant more to me than you could ever know." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. "I'm so glad," she managed. "When I donated, I hoped it would help someone, but I never imagined this." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "It wasn't just the hair," she said softly. "It was what it represented, hope, a future. When I was diagnosed, I felt like my life was over before it had really begun. Losing my hair, it was like losing my identity. But when I got the wig, it was like a lifeline, a reminder that there was still beauty in the world, still kindness." As Emily spoke, Sarah found herself transported back to her own diagnosis, her own fears. She remembered the day she had shaved her head, how she had cried as the locks fell to the floor. And she remembered the first time she had put on a wig, how it had given her the courage to face the world again. "I understand," Sarah said, reaching out to take Emily's hand. "More than you know." Emily's eyes widened in realization. You've been through it too?" Sarah nodded, her free hand unconsciously going to her scar. 2 years ago. That's why I decided to donate. I wanted to give back, somehow. The revelation seemed to break down the last barriers between them. Suddenly, they were talking freely, sharing their experiences, their fears, their triumphs. They laughed over the absurdities of hospital gowns and the weird food cravings brought on by chemo. They cried together over the friends they had lost along the way. As they talked, Sarah felt a weight lifting from her shoulders, a weight she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. Here was someone who truly understood, who had walked the same path and emerged on the other side. Emily, too, seemed to relax, her initial nervousness replaced by a quiet joy. You know, she said at one point, when I was going through treatment, I used to imagine the person who had donated the hair for my wig. I would make up stories about them, wonder what their life was like. But I never imagined I'd actually get to meet them. Sarah smiled, touched by the thought. And did I live up to your imagination? Emily laughed, a sound full of life and hope. You exceeded it. You're real, and that's better than any story I could have made up. As their conversation flowed, Sarah found herself studying Emily, seeing beyond the familiar hair to the young woman beneath. She saw strength in the set of Emily's shoulders, determination in the line of her jaw. But she also saw vulnerability, the lingering shadows of fear that Sarah knew all too well. How are you doing now? Sarah asked softly. With your recovery? Emily's smile faltered slightly. I'm in remission, she said. 6 months now. But she trailed off, her eyes distant. But you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, Sarah finished for her. It wasn't a question. Emily nodded, tears welling up again. Is it always like this? This fear? Sarah took a deep breath, considering her words carefully. It gets easier, she said finally. The fear, it never goes away completely, but it becomes a part of you, a reminder to live fully, to appreciate every moment. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of shared experience hanging between them. Then Emily straightened, a determined look crossing her face. I want to do what you did, she said. When my hair grows back, I want to donate it. I want to pass on this gift. Sarah felt a surge of pride and affection for this young woman she had just met. That's a beautiful idea, she said. And when you do, I'll be right there with you. As their meeting drew to a close, both women felt a sense of reluctance to part. They had formed a connection that transcended the circumstances of their meeting, a bond forged in shared struggle and mutual understanding. Thank you, Emily said as they stood to leave. Not just for the donation, but for this. For being here, for understanding. Sarah pulled her into a hug, feeling Emily's tears on her shoulder. Thank you, she whispered back, for reminding me why it all matters. As they parted, promises to stay in touch exchanged. Sarah felt a sense of purpose settling over her. She had set out to give something back, to make meaning of her survival. What she had found was so much more. A connection, a reminder of the strength of the human spirit, and a renewed sense of hope for the future. Walking out of the community center, Sarah tilted her face to the sun, feeling its warmth on her skin. The world seemed brighter somehow, full of possibility. She had taken a step into the unknown, and in doing so, had found a new path forward. The weeks following Sarah's meeting with Emily passed in a whirlwind of emotion and activity. The connection they had forged that day seemed to have opened a floodgate, releasing feelings and memories Sarah had long kept bottled up. She found herself experiencing a renewed sense of purpose, a drive to make a difference that went beyond her classroom walls. One crisp morning, as Sarah sat at her kitchen table grading papers, her phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Just had my 6-month checkup. All clear. Couldn't have gotten through it without your support. Thank you. Sarah's heart swelled with joy and relief. She quickly typed back a response, her fingers flying over the keys. That's wonderful news, Emily. I'm so proud of you. We should celebrate. As she set her phone down, Sarah's gaze fell on the stack of papers before her. The red marks she had been making suddenly seemed less important in the grand scheme of things. A thought began to form in her mind, nebulous at first, but quickly gaining clarity. Later that day, Sarah found herself in the office of Principal Jameson, her heart racing with nervous excitement. The older woman looked up from her computer, a quizzical expression on her face. Sarah? Is everything all right? Sarah took a deep breath, steadying herself. Yes, Mrs. Jameson. Actually, I wanted to discuss an idea with you. It's about starting a new program at the school. Principal Jameson leaned back in her chair, her interest piqued. Go on. I've been thinking, Sarah began, her confidence growing as she spoke, about how we could better support students and families affected by serious illnesses. Not just cancer, but any long-term health challenges. What if we created a mentorship program, connecting students who are going through treatment or recovery with others who have been through similar experiences? The principal's eyes widened as Sarah outlined her vision, a network of support that would extend beyond the classroom, providing emotional and academic assistance to students facing health crises. As she spoke, Sarah could see the idea taking root, growing in the fertile ground of possibility. This is quite ambitious, Sarah, Principal Jameson said when she had finished, but I can see how valuable it could be. You've clearly put a lot of thought into this. Sarah nodded, her cheeks flushed with excitement. I have, and I'd be willing to take the lead on organizing. I know it would be a lot of work, but I think it's important. These kids need to know they're not alone. Principal Jameson studied her for a long moment, then smiled. All right, Sarah, let's do it. Draw up a detailed proposal, and we'll present it to the school board next month. As Sarah left the office, she felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. This was it, the missing piece she had been searching for, a way to take her experience, her pain, and transform it into something positive for others. That evening, Sarah called Dr. Chun to share her news. His enthusiastic response bolstered her confidence even further. Sarah, this is exactly the kind of initiative we need, he said, his voice warm with pride. In fact, I might know some medical students who would be interested in volunteering as mentors. Let me make some calls. The next few weeks were a blur of planning and preparation. Sarah threw herself into researching similar programs, drafting proposals, and reaching out to potential partners in the community. She worked late into the night, fueled by a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Emily became an invaluable ally in the process. Despite her young age, she brought a wealth of insight and enthusiasm to the project. They met regularly at a small cafe near the hospital, poring over plans and sharing ideas. What if we included art therapy as part of the program? Emily suggested one afternoon, her eyes bright with excitement. It helped me so much during my treatment. It could be a way for kids to express themselves when words aren't enough. Sarah nodded, jotting down notes. That's brilliant, Emily, and it could tie into the school's art curriculum. We could even organize an exhibition of the students' work. As they worked, Sarah found herself marveling at the young woman before her. Emily had blossomed in the weeks since their first meeting, her confidence growing alongside her health. The wig, Sarah's hair, was now interwoven with Emily's own regrowth, a visible symbol of her journey and recovery. One day, as they were wrapping up a particularly productive session, Emily grew quiet, a thoughtful expression on her face. Sarah, she said hesitantly, can I ask you something personal? Sarah set down her pen, giving Emily her full attention. Of course. What's on your mind? Emily fidgeted with her coffee cup, her eyes downcast. Do you ever feel guilty? For surviving, I mean, when so many others don't. The question hit Sarah like a physical blow, bringing back memories of sleepless nights and tear-stained pillows. She took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. Yes, she said softly. I do. I think all survivors do, to some extent. It's called survivor's guilt. Emily nodded, relief evident in her expression. How do you deal with it? Sarah reached across the table, taking Emily's hand in hers. By doing exactly what we're doing now, she said. By using our second chance to make a difference. To honor those who didn't make it by living our lives to the fullest. Single quotes. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, but she smiled through them. Thank you, she whispered, for understanding, for everything. As they hugged goodbye that day, Sarah felt a shift in their relationship. They were no longer just survivor and recipient, mentor and mentee. They were friends, partners in a shared mission. The day of the school board meeting arrived with a mix of anticipation and nerves. Sarah stood before the board, her carefully prepared presentation laid out before her. As she spoke, outlining the need for the program and the positive impact it could have, she felt a sense of calm certainty settle over her. This isn't just about academic support, she concluded, her voice strong and clear. It's about showing these kids that they're not defined by their illness, that there's life and hope and a future waiting for them on the other side of treatment. I know, because I've been there, and I know we can make a difference. The silence that followed her presentation felt endless. Then, slowly, one of the board members began to clap. Others joined in, and soon the room was filled with applause. "Ms. Thompson," the board president said, a smile on his face. "I think I speak for all of us when I say we're impressed. This program has the potential to change lives. You have our full support." As Sarah left the meeting, her heart soaring with triumph, she felt her phone buzz in her pocket. It was a text from Emily. "How did it go? Sending good vibes, you." Sarah grinned, quickly typing back. "They loved it. We're approved. Celebration dinner tonight?" She had barely hit send when her phone rang. It was Lisa from the Hair Donation Foundation. "Sarah," Lisa said, her voice tight with emotion. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything, but I have some news. It's about Emily." Sarah's blood ran cold, her earlier elation evaporating in an instant. "What is it? Is she okay?" There was a pause, and Sarah could hear Lisa taking a deep breath. "Emily's latest scan. They found something. The cancer. It might be back." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Lisa's words sank in. Sarah gripped the phone tighter, her mind racing. What can we do?" "Emily's meeting with her oncologist tomorrow to discuss options," Lisa said. "She asked me to call you. She wants you there, Sarah. If you can be." Without hesitation, Sarah replied, "I'll be there. Tell her I'll be there." As she ended the call, Sarah leaned against the wall, her legs suddenly weak. The joy of her earlier victory was overshadowed by this new looming threat. But as the initial shock began to fade, she felt a steely resolve taking its place. They had fought this battle before. They would fight it again, together. The hospital corridor stretched before Sarah, its sterile white walls a stark contrast to the tumult of emotions roiling within her. Each step towards the oncology department felt heavier than the last, her mind racing with memories of her own time in these halls. She found Emily in the waiting room, hunched over in a plastic chair, her parents on either side. The young woman's face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. When she looked up and saw Sarah, a flicker of relief passed over her features. "You came," Emily whispered as Sarah knelt before her, taking her hands. "Of course I came," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her heart. "We're in this together, remember?" Emily's mother, a petite woman with Emily's same warm brown eyes, touched Sarah's shoulder. "Thank you for being here," she said softly. "Emily's told us so much about you." Before Sarah could respond, a nurse appeared in the doorway. "Emily Rodriguez? Dr. Patel is ready to see you now." The walk to the doctor's office felt like a march to the gallows. Sarah could feel Emily trembling beside her, and she instinctively wrapped an arm around the younger woman's shoulders. As they entered the office, Sarah was struck by a sense of déjà vu so strong it nearly took her breath away. Dr. Patel, a kind-faced woman with streaks of gray in her dark hair, greeted them with a somber smile. "Emily, Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez, thank you for coming in. And you must be Sarah," she added, extending her hand. "Emily's told me about you. I'm glad you're here." As they settled into chairs, Sarah felt Emily's hand slip into hers, gripping tightly. Dr. Patel took a deep breath, her expression grave. "I'm afraid the news isn't what we hoped for," she began. "The scan shows a new growth in Emily's left lung. Given her history, we have to assume it's a recurrence of the cancer." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Emily's mother let out a choked sob, while her father sat in stunned silence. Emily herself seemed to shrink in her chair, her face a mask of fear and disbelief. Sarah felt as if she were underwater. Dr. Patel's voice coming to her as if from a great distance as she outlined treatment options and next steps. Chemotherapy, radiation, possible surgery. The words blurred together, a terrifying litany of what was to come. It wasn't until she felt Emily's hand tighten in hers that Sarah snapped back to the present. She looked over to see Emily staring at her, eyes wide and pleading. In that moment, Sarah knew what she had to do. "Dr. Patel," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "What's our plan of attack?" The doctor blinked, surprised by Sarah's use of "our," but quickly recovered. "Well, given the location and size of the tumor, we're recommending an aggressive course of chemotherapy, followed by targeted radiation." As Dr. Patel spoke, Sarah felt Emily begin to sit up straighter beside her. The fear in the young woman's eyes was still there, but now it was tempered with something else: determination. When the meeting ended, Emily's parents went to fill out paperwork, leaving Sarah and Emily alone in the office. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, Emily turned to Sarah, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared." Sarah pulled her into a tight hug, her own eyes filling with tears. "I know," she murmured. "It's okay to be scared, but you're not alone in this. We'll fight it together." Emily pulled back, wiping her eyes. "How did you do it? How did you stay strong?" Sarah thought for a moment, remembering her own battle. "One day at a time," she said finally, "and I leaned on the people who love me. Let us be strong for you when you can't be." As they left the hospital, stepping into the warm afternoon sunlight, Sarah felt a fierce protectiveness wash over her. She had been given a second chance at life, and now she would do everything in her power to ensure Emily got hers. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Emily's treatment began almost immediately, a grueling regimen of chemotherapy that left her weak and nauseated. Sarah found herself splitting her time between the school, where her mentorship program was slowly taking shape, and the hospital, where she sat with Emily through long hours of treatment. One particularly difficult day, as Emily lay curled up in her hospital bed, pale and exhausted from her latest round of chemo, Sarah had an idea. She excused herself, promising to return soon, and hurried down to the hospital gift shop. When she came back, she was carrying a small potted plant, a resilient little succulent with vibrant green leaves. Emily looked at it quizzically as Sarah set it on the bedside table. "What's that for?" she asked, her voice weak but curious. Sarah smiled, adjusting the plant so it caught the light from the window. "This," she said, "is your new project. Your job is to keep it alive and thriving." Emily frowned. "But I can barely take care of myself right now. How am I supposed to care for a plant?" "That's the beauty of it," Sarah explained. "This little guy is tough. It doesn't need much. Just a little water, a little sunlight, and a lot of love. And as it grows, you'll grow stronger too." A small smile tugged at Emily's lips, the first Sarah had seen in days. "You're kind of cheesy. You know that." Sarah laughed, relief flooding through her at this glimpse of Emily's spirit. "Maybe, but sometimes a little cheese is exactly what we need." As the weeks turned into months, the little plant became a symbol of Emily's fight. On good days, she would proudly show Sarah how it had grown a new leaf. On bad days, when the pain and nausea seemed overwhelming, Sarah would gently remind her to water it, to focus on nurturing life. The mentorship program at the school was also beginning to take root. Sarah had recruited a small team of volunteers, fellow teachers, medical students, and even some former patients who were now in remission. They worked tirelessly to create a support network for students facing health challenges, offering tutoring, emotional support, and a sense of community. One evening, as Sarah was leaving the hospital after sitting with Emily through a particularly rough treatment session, she ran into Dr. Chun in the parking lot. "Sarah," he called, jogging to catch up with her. "I heard about Emily. How is she doing?" Sarah sighed, the weight of the day settling heavily on her shoulders. "It's tough," she admitted. "The treatment is brutal, but she's fighting." Dr. Chun nodded, his expression sympathetic. "And how are you holding up?" The question caught Sarah off guard. She had been so focused on Emily, on the program, on being strong for everyone else, that she hadn't really stopped to consider her own emotional state. "I'm managing," she said finally. "It's hard, seeing her go through this, remembering what it was like. But I know I can help her in a way others can't. I have to believe that makes a difference." Dr. Chun placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It does make a difference, Sarah. More than you know. But don't forget to take care of yourself too. You can't pour from an empty cup." As Sarah drove home that night, Dr. Chun's words echoed in her mind. She realized that in her determination to be there for Emily, to make her mentorship program a success, she had been neglecting her own needs. Pulling into her driveway, Sarah made a decision. She would continue to support Emily, to build her program, to be the rock that others could lean on. But she would also make time for herself, to rest, to process, to heal. Because this journey wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about living fully and completely. And that was a lesson she needed to remember, not just for Emily's sake, but for her own as well. As autumn gave way to winter, Sarah found herself navigating an increasingly complex emotional landscape. The mentorship program at school was flourishing, bringing a sense of purpose and community to students facing health challenges. But Emily's battle with cancer continued to be a roller coaster of hope and despair, each small victory overshadowed by the looming threat of setbacks. One frosty morning, Sarah arrived at the hospital for one of Emily's treatment sessions to find the young woman in tears, clumps of hair scattered on her pillow. The chemotherapy had finally taken its toll, and Emily's once vibrant locks were falling out in handfuls. "I thought I was prepared for this," Emily sobbed as Sarah held her close. "I've been through it before, but it still feels like losing a part of myself." Sarah stroked Emily's back, her heart aching. "I know, sweetheart, I know." As Emily's sobs subsided, Sarah gently pulled away, an idea forming in her mind. "What do you say we take control of this situation?" Emily looked up, confusion evident in her red-rimmed eyes. "What do you mean?" Sarah smiled, a glimmer of mischief in her eyes. "I mean, let's shave it off, all of it, on our terms." For a moment, Emily just stared at her. Then, slowly a smile began to spread across her face. "Can we really do that?" "Absolutely," Sarah said, her voice firm. "I'll even do it with you." Emily's eyes widened. "But your hair, you worked so hard to grow it back." Sarah shrugged, running a hand through her own shoulder-length locks. "It's just hair. It'll grow back. What matters is that we're in this together." An hour later, the hospital room had been transformed into an impromptu salon. Dr. Chun, who had stopped by for a check-in, found himself roped into the role of amateur barber. Emily's parents watched from the corner, tears in their eyes but smiles on their faces. "Ready?" Sarah asked, squeezing Emily's hand as they sat side by side, draped in hospital gowns repurposed as barber capes. Emily took a deep breath, then nodded. "Ready." The buzz of the electric clippers filled the room as Dr. Chun began his work. Locks of hair fell to the floor, Emily's dark waves intermingling with Sarah's chestnut strands. As the last of her hair fell away, Emily reached up to touch her now smooth scalp, a look of wonder on her face. "How do I look?" she asked, turning to Sarah. Sarah, her own head now as bald as Emily's, grinned widely. "Like a warrior," she said. "Absolutely beautiful." The impromptu head-shaving party marked a turning point in Emily's treatment. Though the chemotherapy continued to be grueling, she faced it with renewed determination. The little succulent on her bedside table flourished, sprouting new leaves even as winter deepened outside the hospital windows. At school, Sarah's baldness became a talking point, opening up conversations about cancer, empathy, and the power of solidarity. Students who had been hesitant to engage with the mentorship program began to come forward, inspired by their teacher's visible show of support. One particularly cold December afternoon, as Sarah was wrapping up a mentorship session with a freshman undergoing treatment for leukemia, she received an unexpected visitor. Principal Jameson knocked on the classroom door, her expression unreadable. "Sarah, do you have a moment?" she asked. Anxiety fluttered in Sarah's stomach as she followed the principal to her office. Had there been complaints about the program? Was her frequent absence to support Emily causing problems? But as they sat down, Principal Jameson's stern expression melted into a smile. "Sarah, I've just gotten off the phone with the superintendent. Your mentorship program has caught the attention of the school board. They want to implement it district-wide." Sarah's jaw dropped. "District-wide? Really?" Principal Jameson nodded, her eyes shining with pride. "Really? They're impressed by the impact it's had on our students, both those receiving support and those volunteering as mentors. They want you to present the program at the next board meeting." This could be the start of something big, Sarah. As the news sank in, Sarah felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The program expanding meant more students could be helped, more lives touched. But it also meant more responsibility, more time needed when she was already stretched thin between her teaching duties and supporting Emily. That evening, as she sat by Emily's bedside, Sarah shared the news about the program's potential expansion. Emily's face lit up with excitement. "Sarah, that's amazing!" she exclaimed, her enthusiasm momentarily overshadowing her fatigue. "Just think of how many kids you'll be able to help." Sarah smiled, warmed by Emily's reaction, but couldn't shake her lingering doubts. "It is exciting," she admitted, "but I'm worried about taking on more when you're still fighting so hard. I don't want to let you down." Emily's expression softened, and she reached out to take Sarah's hand. "Hey," she said gently, "you could never let me down. You've been my rock through all of this. But you're more than just my support system, Sarah. You have so much to offer the world. Don't hold yourself back on my account." Tears pricked at Sarah's eyes as she squeezed Emily's hand. "When did you get so wise?" she asked, her voice thick with emotion. Emily grinned. "Must be all those chemo drugs. They're making me brilliant." They laughed together, the sound echoing off the sterile hospital walls, transforming the room for a moment into a space of joy and hope. As Christmas approached, bringing with it a blanket of snow and a festive atmosphere that seemed at odds with the serious work of the hospital, Sarah threw herself into preparations for the school board presentation. She worked late into the night, compiling data on the program's impact, crafting a compelling narrative that would showcase its importance. The night before the presentation, Sarah found herself unable to sleep, her mind racing with all the things she wanted to say. She got up, wrapping herself in a warm robe, and padded to her living room. The Christmas tree in the corner cast a soft, multicolored glow over the room. Sarah's gaze fell on a framed photo on her mantle. It was a picture taken at the hospital's Halloween party, just a few weeks after the head-shaving incident. She and Emily were grinning at the camera, their bald heads adorned with glittery temporary tattoos. Despite the obvious signs of Emily's illness, the pallor of her skin, the four stand just visible at the edge of the frame, there was a defiant joy in their expressions. Looking at the photo, Sarah felt a surge of certainty. This was why she was doing all of this. The late nights, the emotional roller coaster, the constant balancing act between her various responsibilities. It was for Emily, yes, but also for all the other Emilys out there. The kids fighting battles that no child should have to face. The families struggling to support them. The survivors carrying invisible scars. With renewed determination, Sarah sat down at her desk and began to revise her presentation. She worked through the night, fueled by a combination of coffee and purpose, crafting a speech that she hoped would not just inform the school board, but move them to action. As the first light of dawn began to filter through her windows, Sarah sat back, exhausted but satisfied. She had done all she could to prepare. Now it was time to trust in the power of her experiences, her passion, and the undeniable impact of the program she had built. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "Good luck today. You're going to be amazing. We're all rooting for you." Sarah smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over her. No matter what happened at the presentation, she knew she had already won something far more valuable than any official recognition. She had found a purpose, a way to turn her pain into power, her survival into support for others. As she got ready for the day ahead, Sarah caught sight of herself in the mirror. Her hair had begun to grow back, a soft fuzz covering her scalp. She ran a hand over it, remembering the day she and Emily had shaved their heads together. It was a visible reminder of how far they had come, and how far they still had to go. With one last look at the photo of her and Emily, Sarah grabbed her presentation materials and headed out the door. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them, because she knew now, more than ever, that she wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for Emily, for her students, for everyone who needed a reminder that they weren't alone in their battles. And that, she realized, was the greatest gift her survival had given her, the power to make a difference, one life at a time. As Sarah stepped into the school board meeting room, she felt a flutter of nerves in her stomach. The room was packed with district officials, principals from other schools, and even a few local reporters. She spotted Principal Jameson in the front row, offering an encouraging smile. Taking a deep breath, Sarah made her way to the podium. She looked out at the sea of faces, some curious, others skeptical. For a moment, doubt threatened to overwhelm her. Then she thought of Emily, of all the students who had found hope and support through the mentorship program. With renewed determination, she began to speak. "Good morning," she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I'm here today to talk to you about more than just a program. I'm here to talk about hope, about community, and about the power we have to change lives." As Sarah delved into her presentation, she could feel the energy in the room shift. She shared stories of students who had found the strength to continue their studies despite grueling treatments, of friendships forged in the crucible of shared experience, of volunteers whose lives had been transformed by the simple act of showing up for someone in need. "This program isn't just about academic support," she continued, her passion evident in every word. "It's about showing these kids that they're not defined by their illness, that there's life and hope and a future waiting for them on the other side of treatment. I know because I've been there." With that, Sarah reached up and removed the wig she had worn for the presentation. A collective gasp went through the room as she stood before them, her regrowth of hair still short but undeniably present. "2 years ago, I was the one fighting for my life," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "And it was the support of my community that got me through. Now, I have the privilege of paying that forward. And I'm asking you to help me expand that circle of support to every student in our district who needs it." As Sarah concluded her presentation, the room erupted in applause. She could see tears in the eyes of several board members, and Principal Jameson was beaming with pride. The superintendent stood up, making his way to the podium. "Miss Thompson," he said, his voice filled with admiration, "I think I speak for all of us when I say we're not just impressed, we're inspired. This program has our full support for district-wide implementation. Moreover, we'd like you to lead the expansion as our new district coordinator for student health and wellness support." Sarah's jaw dropped. She had hoped for approval to expand the program, but this was beyond her wildest dreams. As the reality of the offer sank in, she felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was a chance to make a real, lasting difference on a scale she had never imagined possible. As the meeting adjourned, Sarah found herself surrounded by well-wishers and congratulations. In a daze, she made her way out of the building, her mind racing with the possibilities and challenges that lay ahead. She was so lost in thought that she almost missed a familiar figure waiting by her car. Emily was there, bundled up against the cold, a bright smile on her face despite the obvious fatigue in her eyes. "Emily," Sarah exclaimed, rushing to hug her. "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be resting?" Emily laughed, returning the hug. "And miss your big moment?" "No way. Mom drove me." "So, how did it go?" As Sarah recounted the events of the meeting, Emily's eyes grew wide with excitement. "Sarah, that's amazing," she cried, throwing her arms around her friend once more. "I knew you could do it. You're going to help so many people." Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes, overwhelmed by the emotions of the day. "I couldn't have done it without you, you know?" she said softly. "You've inspired me every step of the way." Emily's smile softened, a look of understanding passing between them. "We inspire each other," she said. "That's what friends do." As they stood there in the parking lot, the winter sun weak but present, Sarah felt a sense of rightness settle over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, with the program expansion, with Emily's ongoing treatment, she knew they would face them together. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. Sarah threw herself into her new role, working tirelessly to implement the mentorship program across the district. She traveled from school to school, training volunteers, setting up support systems, and sharing her vision of a community where no student had to face health challenges alone. Despite her busy schedule, Sarah made sure to be there for Emily's treatments whenever possible. They had fallen into a routine of sorts. Sarah would bring work to do while Emily underwent chemo, and they would talk, laugh, and sometimes just sit in comfortable silence. One particularly difficult day, As Emily lay curled up on her side, battling waves of nausea, Sarah noticed that the little succulent plant was looking worse for wear. Its once vibrant leaves were starting to wilt, its color fading. "Oh no," Emily murmured, following Sarah's gaze. "I think I forgot to water it." Sarah gently picked up the plant, examining it closely. "It's okay," she said, her voice gentle. "It's a tough little thing. We'll get it back on track." As she carefully watered the plant, Sarah couldn't help but see it as a metaphor for their own journey. There were good days and bad days, times of growth and times of wilting, but with care, patience, and love, they could weather any storm. Spring arrived with a burst of new life and renewed hope. Emily's latest scans had shown significant improvement, and while she wasn't out of the woods yet, her doctors were cautiously optimistic. As Sarah's program continued to grow and evolve, she found herself increasingly in the public eye. Local news stations ran stories on the mentorship initiative, and she was invited to speak at conferences and events across the state. One sunny afternoon, as Sarah was preparing for a particularly important presentation, she received an unexpected call from Lisa at the Hair Donation Foundation. "Sarah," Lisa said, her voice brimming with excitement, "I have some news that I think you're going to want to hear. Remember how you and Emily talked about her donating her hair when it grew back? Well, we have a special request." Sarah listened intently as Lisa explained. A young girl, newly diagnosed with leukemia, had seen a news story about Sarah and Emily's journey. She was scared about losing her hair and had asked if she could have a wig made from their donated hair, a symbol of hope and solidarity. From two survivors who understood what she was going through. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as Lisa spoke. "Of course," she said without hesitation. "I'm sure Emily will feel the same way. It would be an honor." That evening, Sarah visited Emily to share the news. As expected, the young woman was thrilled at the idea. "It's like everything's coming full circle," Emily said, running a hand through her hair, which had grown into a stylish pixie cut. "From you donating to me to us donating together. It's beautiful." Sarah nodded, a lump forming in her throat. "It is, and it's all because you had the courage to reach out, to want to meet the person behind the donation. You started this whole chain of events, Emily." Emily blushed, shaking her head. "We did it together. That's what matters." As they sat there, planning their joint hair donation, Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. Her life had taken such an unexpected turn, filled with challenges and heartache, yes, but also with immeasurable joy and purpose. The following week, Sarah and Emily found themselves back at the same salon where they had first met Lisa, ready to donate their hair once again. This time, however, the atmosphere was one of celebration rather than apprehension. As the stylist carefully cut their locks, Sarah caught Emily's eye in the mirror. They shared a smile, no words necessary to convey the depth of their friendship and the journey they had traveled together. Later, as they left the salon, Sarah's phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from the superintendent, informing her that the State Department of Education had taken notice of their district's mentorship program. They were interested in implementing it on a statewide level, with Sarah at the helm of the initiative. Sarah stared at her phone, momentarily overwhelmed by the scale of what was being proposed. Emily, noticing her friend's expression, gently bumped her shoulder. "Hey," she said softly, "you okay?" Sarah looked up, meeting Emily's concerned gaze. "Yeah," she said, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Just realizing how far we've come, and how far we still have to go." Emily linked her arm through Sarah's as they walked. "Well, whatever comes next, we'll face it together. That's what friends do, right?" Sarah nodded, feeling a surge of determination. "That's right, together." As they made their way down the street, their newly shortened hair ruffling in the spring breeze, Sarah felt a sense of excitement for the future. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever victories or setbacks they might face, she knew that the bonds they had forged with each other, with the students they had helped, with the community they had built, would give them the strength to persevere. Their journey, which had begun with a simple act of donation, had blossomed into something far greater than either of them could have imagined. It was a testament to the power of human connection, to the resilience of the human spirit, and to the profound impact that one person's compassion could have on the world. As they rounded the corner, heading towards their favorite cafe to celebrate, Sarah caught sight of their reflection in a store window. Two women, survivors and friends, walking side by side, ready to face whatever life had in store for them. And in that moment, Sarah knew with absolute certainty that this friendship, this purpose, this life she had found was the most precious gift of all. As summer approached, bringing with it longer days and the promise of new beginnings, Sarah found herself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. The state's interest in her mentorship program had sparked a flurry of meetings, proposals, and planning sessions. She spent long hours poring over budgets, curriculum plans, and implementation strategies, determined to ensure that the program's expansion would maintain the personal touch that had made it so effective. One sweltering afternoon, as Sarah sat in her newly assigned office at the district headquarters, she received an unexpected visitor. Dr. Chun knocked on her open door, a proud smile on his face. "Look at you," he said, gesturing to the stacks of papers and the whiteboards covered in flowcharts and ideas. From patient to district coordinator to potential statewide program director, "I always knew you were destined for great things, Sarah." Sarah felt a rush of warmth at his words. "I couldn't have done any of this without you. Dr. Chen, your support has meant everything." He waved off her gratitude, but she could see the emotion in his eyes. "I just pointed you in the right direction. You're the one who ran with it." He paused, his expression growing more serious. "But that's not why I'm here. I have some news about Emily." Sarah's heart skipped a beat, fear immediately coursing through her veins. "What is it? Is she okay?" Dr. Chun held up a hand, his smile returning. "She's more than okay, Sarah. Her latest scans came back clear. No sign of cancer. She's in remission." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as the news sank in. Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes, a mixture of relief, joy, and overwhelming gratitude washing over her. "Really?" she whispered, hardly daring to believe it. Dr. Chun nodded, his own eyes suspiciously moist. "Really?" She wanted to tell you herself, but she's still processing the news with her family. "I thought you'd want to know right away." Sarah stood up, needing to move, to do something to release the surge of emotions coursing through her. Without thinking, she threw her arms around Dr. Chun, hugging him tightly. "Thank you," she murmured, "for everything, for saving her, for saving me." As she pulled back, Dr. Chun squeezed her shoulders gently. "You did the saving, Sarah. Your friendship, your support, that's what got Emily through this. Never doubt the power of what you've created here." After Dr. Chun left, Sarah sat at her desk, staring out the window at the bustling school grounds below. Emily was in remission. The program was expanding. It felt as if everything was falling into place, a cosmic alignment of all the struggles and triumphs of the past year. Yet, as the initial euphoria began to fade, Sarah felt an unexpected twinge of anxiety. What would this mean for her relationship with Emily? Would the bond they had forged through crisis remain as strong in times of health and normalcy? Shaking off these thoughts, Sarah reached for her phone to call Emily. Whatever the future held, their friendship had been built on more than just shared adversity. It was time to celebrate. The next few weeks passed in a blur of joyous celebrations and intense planning sessions. Emily's remission party, held in the hospital garden where they had spent so many hours during her treatment, was a testament to the community they have built. Students from the mentorship program mingled with hospital staff, family members, and school officials, all united in their celebration of Emily's recovery and the program's success. As Sarah watched Emily laugh with her parents, her cheeks flushed with health and happiness, she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Lisa from the Hair Donation Foundation standing behind her, a mysterious smile on her face. "Sarah, do you have a moment?" Lisa asked, gesturing towards a quieter corner of the garden. Intrigued, Sarah followed her. As they reached a secluded bench, Lisa pulled out a small, gift-wrapped box from her bag. "This is for you," she said, handing it to Sarah. "Well, for you and Emily." "Really?" Sarah opened the box carefully, gasping softly as she saw what was inside. It was a delicate silver bracelet, adorned with two small charms, a pair of scissors, and a heart. Engraved on the heart were the words, "Full Circle." "It's beautiful," Sarah breathed, running a finger over the intricate details. Lisa smiled warmly. "It's from Sophia, the little girl who received the wig made from your and Emily's hair. She wanted to thank you both for giving her hope during her treatment. And," Lisa paused, her eyes twinkling, "she wanted me to tell you that she's planning to grow her hair out to donate as soon as she can. Your act of kindness is already inspiring the next generation." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as the full impact of Lisa's words hit her. What had started as a simple act of donation had grown into something so much bigger, a ripple effect of compassion and hope spreading out to touch countless lives. Later that evening, as the party wound down, Sarah found Emily sitting alone by the fountain, a contemplative expression on her face. She sat down beside her friend, wordlessly handing her the bracelet and recounting Lisa's story. Emily's eyes filled with tears as she fastened the bracelet around her wrist. "It's amazing, isn't it?" she said softly. "How one small act can change so much." Sarah nodded, wrapping an arm around Emily's shoulders. "It is, and it's not over yet. This is just the beginning." As they sat there, watching the sun set over the garden, Sarah felt a sense of peace settle over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, the program expansion, Emily's continued recovery, the uncertain future, she knew they would face them together, stronger for all they had been through. The following months brought a flurry of activity as Sarah worked tirelessly to prepare for the statewide launch of the mentorship program. She traveled across the state, meeting with educators, health professionals, and government officials to gather support and refine the program's structure. Emily, now cancer-free and bursting with renewed energy, threw herself into helping with the program's expansion. She became a powerful advocate, sharing her story at fundraising events and training sessions from new mentors. One crisp autumn day, as Sarah stood at the podium in the state capitol, preparing to officially launch the statewide initiative, she felt a moment of déjà vu. Just as she had nearly a year ago at the school board meeting, she looked out at a sea of faces, some curious, some skeptical, all waiting to hear what she had to say. But this time, there was no fear, no doubt. Sarah knew exactly why she was there and what she needed to say. She took a deep breath and began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, and honored guests, I stand before you today not just as an educator or a program coordinator, but as a survivor, a friend, and a firm believer in the power of human connection." As Sarah shared the story of the program's inception, its growth, and its impact, she could see the audience becoming more engaged, more moved by the tales of lives transformed and hope restored. "This program is about more than just academic support," she continued, her voice strong and clear. "It's about creating a community where no child feels alone in their fight, where every student, regardless of their health challenges, knows that they have a whole team of people rooting for them, believing in them and standing beside them every step of the way." She gestured to Emily, who was sitting in the front row, the silver bracelet glinting on her wrist. "It's about turning survivors into mentors, patients into advocates, and transforming the darkest moments of our lives into opportunities for growth, compassion, and change." As Sarah concluded her speech, the room erupted into applause. She could see tears in the eyes of many audience members, and several officials were already on their feet, signaling their support for the program. In that moment, as the sound of applause washed over her, Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for her own survival, for the friendship she had found with Emily, for the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of so many. As she stepped down from the podium, Emily was there to greet her with a tight hug. "You did it," she whispered fiercely. "You really did it." Sarah pulled back, smiling through her own tears. "We did it," she corrected gently. "All of us, together." Later that evening, as Sarah sat on her balcony, watching the sun set over the city, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. From the fear and uncertainty of her cancer diagnosis to the triumph of recovery, from the simple act of donating her hair to the creation of a statewide support program, it had been a path full of unexpected twists and turns. But as she fingered the silver bracelet on her wrist, a twin to Emily's, Sarah knew that she wouldn't change a single step of that journey. Every challenge, every setback, every moment of doubt had led her here, to a place where she could use her experiences to bring hope and support to others. The future stretched out before her, full of possibilities and challenges yet to come. But Sarah was ready to face whatever lay ahead, because she knew now, more than ever, that the most powerful force in the world was not cancer or fear or even death. It was love, compassion, and the unbreakable bonds of human connection. As the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, Sarah made a silent promise to herself and to all the students her program would reach, to keep fighting, keep hoping, and keep believing in the power of one person to make a difference. For in the end, that was the greatest lesson she had learned, that even in our darkest moments, we have the power to light the way for others. And in doing so, we find our own path forward, one act of kindness at a time. As the statewide mentorship program took root, Sarah found herself navigating a new landscape of challenges and opportunities. The initiative that had begun in a single school district was now touching lives across the entire state. And with that expansion came a host of new responsibilities and complexities. One crisp morning in late autumn, Sarah sat in her office, surrounded by stacks of reports and data from the program's first few months of statewide operation. The numbers were encouraging. More students were receiving support. Volunteer participation was up, and initial feedback from schools and families was overwhelmingly positive. Yet Sarah couldn't shake a nagging feeling that something was missing. A knock at her door interrupted her musings. She looked up to see Emily standing in the doorway, a mischievous grin on her face. "Busy brooding?" Emily teased, stepping into the office. Sarah laughed, pushing away from her desk. "Is it that obvious?" Emily perched on the edge of the desk, her eyes twinkling. "Only to someone who knows you as well as I do." "What's on your mind?" Sarah sighed, gesturing to the papers spread before her. "It's all good news, really. The program is growing. We're reaching more kids than ever." But she trailed off, struggling to articulate her concerns. "But it doesn't feel as personal anymore?" Emily finished for her. Sarah nodded, relieved that Emily understood. "Exactly. We're helping more people, which is amazing. But I worry we're losing that one-on-one connection that made the program so special in the first place." Emily was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a laptop. "I think I might have something that could help with that," she said, opening the computer and turning it towards Sarah. On the screen was a website, still clearly in development but already looking sleek and professional. The header read "Full Circle, Connecting Survivors and Fighters." "What's this?" Sarah asked, leaning in for a closer look. Emily's eyes lit up with excitement. "It's a platform I've been working on. The idea is to create a secure online space where mentors and mentees from across the state can connect, share stories, and offer support. It's like a social network, but specifically for our community." As Emily walked her through the features of the site, private messaging, group forums organized by diagnosis or age group, a resource library, and even a section for virtual events, Sarah felt a surge of excitement building within her. "Emily, this is brilliant," she exclaimed. "It addresses exactly what I've been worried about. This can help us maintain that personal touch, even as we expand." Emily beamed, clearly pleased by Sarah's reaction. "I was hoping you'd like it. I've been working on it in my spare time, but I think with the program's resources behind it, we could really make it something special." For the next few hours, Sarah and Emily huddled over the laptop, brainstorming ideas and refining the concept. As they worked, Sarah felt that familiar spark of inspiration and purpose that had driven her from the beginning of this journey. "You know," Sarah said as they were wrapping up, "I think this calls for a celebration. Dinner at Antonio's?" Emily's face lit up at the mention of their favorite Italian restaurant. "You read my mind." As they settled into their usual booth at Antonio's later that evening, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. Here they were, no longer patient and donor, but true friends and partners in a shared mission. Over plates of steaming pasta and glasses of wine, they continued to discuss the potential of the online platform. But as the night wore on, their conversation drifted to more personal topics. "So," Emily said, twirling spaghetti around her fork, "how are things going with Dr. Handsome?" Sarah nearly choked on her wine. "Dr. Handsome?" she sputtered. Emily grinned wickedly. "Don't play innocent. I've seen the way Dr. Chun looks at you when he thinks no one's watching. And don't think I haven't noticed how you blush every time he compliments your work." Sarah felt her cheeks heating up even as she spoke. "It's not. We're just colleagues. Friends." Emily raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Uh-huh. And I'm the Queen of England." As they bantered back and forth, Sarah found herself truly considering the possibility for the first time. She'd been so focused on her work, on Emily's recovery, on building the program, that she'd barely had time to think about her personal life. But now, with Emily's teasing bringing it to the forefront, she couldn't deny that there was something there with Dr. Chun, a spark of possibility that both thrilled and terrified her. "Even if there was something there," Sarah said slowly, "I wouldn't know how to. I mean, it's been so long since I've even thought about dating. And with everything else going on." Emily reached across the table, squeezing Sarah's hand. "Hey," she said softly, "you deserve happiness too, you know? You've done so much for everyone else. Maybe it's time to do something for yourself." Sarah squeezed back, feeling a rush of affection for her friend. "When did you get so wise?" she teased. Emily shrugged, a mock-serious expression on her face. "Must be all those chemo drugs. They made me brilliant, remember?" They both burst out laughing, drawing curious looks from nearby diners. As their laughter subsided, Sarah felt a weight she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying lift from her shoulders. She'd been so focused on being strong, on being a mentor and a leader, that she'd almost forgotten how to just be Sarah. The next morning, energized by her dinner with Emily and the excitement of the new online platform, Sarah strode into her office with renewed purpose. She spent the morning making calls, setting up meetings to discuss the implementation of Emily's website idea. Just before lunch, she received an unexpected call from the state superintendent of education. "Sarah," he said, his voice warm with approval, "I've been looking over the latest reports from the mentorship program. I have to say, I'm impressed. We're already seeing improvements in attendance and academic performance among participating students." Sarah felt a glow of pride at his words. "Thank you, sir. It's been a team effort, truly." "Indeed," he replied, "and that's why I'm calling. We've received an invitation from the National Education Association. They're holding a conference on innovative support programs for students with health challenges, and they want you to be a keynote speaker." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. A national conference? It was an incredible opportunity, a chance to share their work with educators from across the country. But it also meant stepping onto an even larger stage, taking their local success and presenting it to a national audience. "It's a big ask, I know." The superintendent continued, sensing her hesitation. "But I think this could be a real game changer, not just for our state, but for students all over the country." As the call ended, Sarah sat back in her chair, her mind reeling with the possibilities. A national conference, the chance to impact even more lives. It was everything she had ever dreamed of, and yet, she glanced at the framed photo on her desk, a snapshot from Emily's remission party, the two of them grinning widely, their matching bracelets glinting in the sunlight. It was a reminder of where this all began, of the personal connections that had driven her from the start. With sudden clarity, Sarah knew what she had to do. She picked up her phone and dialed Emily's number. "Hey," she said when Emily answered, "how would you feel about a trip to Washington, D.C.? As she outlined the conference invitation and her idea for them to present together, Sarah felt a familiar excitement building. This was the next step in their journey, a chance to take everything they had learned, everything they had built, and share it with the world. "Sarah," Emily said when she had finished explaining, her voice thick with emotion, "are you sure? This is your moment. You've worked so hard for this." "It's our moment," Sarah corrected gently. "This program, this journey, it's always been about connection, about showing people they're not alone. What better way to demonstrate that than by standing together on that stage?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, Sarah worried she had overstepped. Then Emily's voice came back, filled with determination and joy. "Let's do it," she said. "Let's show them what Full Circle is really all about." As Sarah hung up the phone, she felt a sense of rightness settle over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, the conference, the expansion of the program, her budding feelings for Dr. Chun, she knew she could face them because she wasn't alone. She had Emily, she had her team, she had the entire community they had built together. Looking out her office window at the autumn leaves swirling in the breeze, Sarah smiled to herself. This journey had begun with a simple act of donation, a single strand connecting two strangers. Now, it had grown into a vast network of support and hope, touching lives across the state and beyond. And yet, at its heart, it remained what it had always been, a testament to the power of human connection, to the strength we find in each other, and to the incredible things that can happen when we open our hearts to the possibility of making a difference. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over her office, Sarah turned back to her desk, ready to start planning for the next chapter in their ever-expanding story. The future stretched out before her, full of promise and possibility, and she couldn't wait to see where it would lead. The weeks leading up to the National Education Association Conference were a whirlwind of preparation. Sarah and Emily spent countless hours refining their presentation, weaving together statistics and personal anecdotes to create a narrative that would not only inform but inspire their audience. As the day of their departure for Washington, D.C. approached, Sarah found herself battling a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The night before their flight, she sat on her balcony, staring out at the city lights when her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Chun. "Just wanted to wish you luck for the conference. You're going to be amazing. Don't forget to breathe." Sarah smiled, feeling a warm flutter in her chest at his words. She typed back a quick thank you, then hesitated, her finger hovering over the send button. Taking a deep breath, she added, "When I get back, maybe we could grab coffee to discuss the conference results." His reply came almost instantly. "I'd like that very much. It's a date." Sarah's heart skipped a beat at the word date. She set her phone down, a giddy smile spreading across her face. It was a small step, but it felt momentous. The next morning, Sarah and Emily boarded their flight to D.C., both buzzing with nervous energy. As the plane took off, Emily reached over and squeezed Sarah's hand. "Can you believe this?" she whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "A year ago, I was in a hospital bed, and you were just starting to regrow your hair. Now we're flying to D.C. to speak at a national conference. It's like a dream." Sarah squeezed back, feeling a lump form in her throat. "A dream come true," she agreed softly. Upon arriving in Washington, they were swept up in a flurry of activity. There were meet and greets with other speakers, last-minute rehearsals, and a whirlwind tour of the conference facilities. Through it all, Sarah marveled at Emily's poise and enthusiasm. The shy, scared girl she had first met in the hospital seemed a lifetime away from this confident young woman who charmed everyone she met. The morning of their presentation dawned bright and clear. As Sarah stood backstage, adjusting her blazer and running through her talking points one last time, she felt a familiar hand on her shoulder. "Ready for this?" Emily asked, her eyes shining with excitement. Sarah took a deep breath, centering herself. "Ready as I'll ever be. You?" Emily nodded, reaching down to touch the silver bracelet on her wrist, a gesture Sarah recognized as one of self-reassurance. "Let's do this." As they stepped out onto the stage, the bright lights momentarily blinding them, Sarah felt a surge of confidence. This was what they had been working towards, what all those long nights and difficult days had been leading to. "Good morning," Sarah began, her voice strong and clear. "We're here today to talk to you about the power of connection, about hope, and about the incredible things that can happen when we choose to open our hearts to others." For the next hour, Sarah and Emily held the audience spellbound as they shared their story. They spoke of Sarah's initial cancer diagnosis and treatment, of her decision to donate her hair, and of the serendipitous meeting that had brought them together. They detailed the birth and growth of the mentorship program, sharing both the triumphs and the challenges they had faced along the way. But it was when they began to share the stories of the students they had helped that the true impact of their work became clear. There wasn't a dry eye in the house as they recounted tales of children finding hope in the darkest of times, of families brought together by shared experiences, of lives transformed by the simple act of connection. As they neared the end of their presentation, Emily stepped forward, her voice strong despite the emotion evident in her eyes. "When I was first diagnosed with cancer," she said, "I thought my life was over. I couldn't see a future beyond the hospital walls, beyond the next round of chemo. But then I received a gift, a wig made from the hair of a stranger who had faced the same battles I was facing. That gift gave me more than just hair. It gave me hope. It showed me that there was life after cancer, that I wasn't alone in my fight." She turned to Sarah, reaching out to clasp her hand. "And then I met that stranger, and my world opened up in ways I never could have imagined." Sarah didn't just give me her hair. She gave me friendship, support, and a purpose. Together, we've built something that's bigger than both of us. A community of support that spans our entire state and, hopefully soon, the entire country. Sarah squeezed Emily's hand, feeling tears prick at her eyes as she addressed the audience. "What we've created with Full Circle isn't just a mentorship program. It's a lifeline. It's a reminder that no matter how dark things may seem, there is always hope. There is always someone ready to stand beside you, to hold your hand through the storm." As they concluded their presentation, the room erupted in applause. Sarah and Emily stood there, hand in hand, overwhelmed by the response. As they made their way off the stage, they were immediately surrounded by educators and administrators, all eager to learn more about how they could implement similar programs in their own districts. The rest of the conference passed in a blur of workshops, networking events, and interviews with education journalists. By the time they boarded their flight home, Sarah and Emily were exhausted but exhilarated. "I think we really made an impact," Emily said as they settled into their seats. "Did you see how many people were taking notes during our Q&A session?" Sarah nodded, a feeling of accomplishment washing over her. "It's amazing to think that soon, there might be Full Circle programs all over the country." As the plane took off, Sarah found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. From the fear and uncertainty of her cancer diagnosis to the triumph of standing on that stage in DC, it had been a path full of unexpected twists and turns. Yet every step, every challenge, had led them here, to a place where they could use their experiences to bring hope and support to others on a scale they had never imagined possible. Upon their return home, Sarah was greeted with a flurry of emails and phone calls from conference attendees, eager to learn more about implementing Full Circle in their own districts. As she sat at her desk, sorting through the messages, a knock at her door made her look up. Dr. Chun stood in the doorway, a warm smile on his face and 2 cups of coffee in his hands. "I heard you were back," he said, stepping into the office. "Thought you might need this." Sarah felt her heart skip a beat as she accepted the coffee. "Thank you," she said softly. "It's good to be back." As they sat and talked, Sarah filling him in on the details of the conference, she felt a sense of contentment settle over her. This, the work she was doing, the lives she was touching, the connection she was forming, this was what she had been meant for all along. The following months saw Full Circle expand beyond their wildest dreams. School districts across the country began implementing their own versions of the program, with Sarah and her team providing guidance and support every step of the way. Emily's online platform became a hub of activity, connecting mentors and mentees across state lines and even internationally. One sunny afternoon, as Sarah sat in her office reviewing the latest batch of success stories from Full Circle participants, she received an unexpected call. It was from a major publishing house, expressing interest in having Sarah and Emily write a book about their experiences and the Full Circle program. As she hung up the phone, still in shock from the offer, Sarah's gaze fell on the small potted succulent on her desk, the same one she had given Emily during her treatment. Now thriving under Sarah's care, it was a reminder of how far they had come, of the growth that can occur even in the harshest of conditions. With a smile, Sarah picked up her phone to call Emily. As it rang, she glanced at the silver bracelet on her wrist, the words "Full Circle" catching the light. From a simple act of hair donation to a nationwide program, from strangers to the closest of friends, their journey had indeed come full circle. And yet, Sarah knew it was far from over. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, a new opportunity to spread hope and foster connections. As Emily's voice came over the line, excited and curious about the reason for the call, Sarah felt a familiar surge of anticipation. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever new heights they might reach, she knew one thing for certain: they would face it all together, bound by the unbreakable bonds of friendship, survival, and the shared mission to make a difference in the world, one connection at a time. As Sarah began to share the news about the book offer with Emily, she could hear the excitement building in her friend's voice. They spent the next hour on the phone, brainstorming ideas and envisioning how they could use this platform to reach even more people with their message of hope and connection. In the weeks that followed, Sarah and Emily threw themselves into the writing process. They met regularly at their favorite cafe, laptops open and notebooks spread across the table, working to capture their journey in words. It was a process of rediscovery, of reliving both the painful and triumphant moments that had brought them to where they were. One evening, as they were wrapping up a particularly intense writing session, Emily looked up from her laptop, a thoughtful expression on her face. "You know," she said, "writing this book, it's made me realize something." Sarah set down her pen, giving Emily her full attention. "What's that?" Emily smiled, her eyes shining with emotion. "It's made me realize how much we've grown. Not just the program, but us. We're not the same people we were when this all started." Sarah nodded, feeling a lump form in her throat. "We're not," she agreed softly. "We're stronger, wiser, happier," Emily added, reaching across the table to squeeze Sarah's hand. "Despite everything, or maybe because of it, we're happier." As they packed up their things and stepped out into the cool evening air, Sarah felt a sense of profound gratitude wash over her. She looked at Emily, this young woman who had become like a sister to her, and marveled at the journey they had shared. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. Between managing the expanding Full Circle program, writing the book, and navigating her blossoming relationship with Dr. Chen, Sarah barely had a moment to catch her breath. But through it all, she felt a sense of purpose and fulfillment that she had never experienced before. As the book neared completion, Sarah and Emily were invited to appear on a popular morning talk show to discuss Full Circle and their upcoming publication. The night before the interview, Sarah found herself unable to sleep, a mixture of excitement and nerves keeping her awake. She stepped out onto a balcony, breathing in the cool night air. As she gazed out at the city lights, Sarah's mind wandered back to the night before her cancer diagnosis, when she had stood in this very spot, unknowing of the journey that lay ahead. How different everything was now. How much she had changed, grown, learned. The woman who had stood here that night, full of fear and uncertainty, seemed like a stranger to her now. The next morning, as Sarah and Emily sat in the green room of the talk show studio, waiting to go on air, Sarah felt a familiar flutter of nerves in her stomach. Emily, noticing her friend's anxiety, reached over and took her hand. "Hey," she said softly, "remember what you told me before my first chemo session? We're in this together. That's still true. Always will be." Sarah squeezed Emily's hand, feeling a wave of calm wash over her. "Together," she echoed with a smile. As they stepped onto the set, the bright lights and camera lenses trained on them, Sarah felt a surge of confidence. This was their story, their truth, and it was a story worth sharing. The interview flew by in a blur of questions and shared anecdotes. Sarah and Emily spoke about the origins of Full Circle, about the impact it had made, and about their hopes for the future. As they discussed the upcoming book, Sarah could see the genuine interest and emotion in the host's eyes. "You know," the host said as they neared the end of the segment, "listening to your story, it's clear that what you've created goes far beyond just a mentorship program. You've built a community, a support system that's changing lives. How does it feel to know you've made such a profound impact?" Sarah paused, considering her words carefully. "It's humbling," she said finally, And it's a reminder of the power we all have to make a difference. When I was first diagnosed with cancer, I felt so alone, so powerless. But through this journey, I've learned that even in our darkest moments, we have the ability to reach out, to connect, to lift each other up. Emily nodded, picking up the thread. What Sarah and I have come to understand is that healing isn't just about medicine or treatments. It's about connection. It's about knowing you're not alone in your fight. And that's what Full Circle is all about. Creating those connections, building that community of support. As the segment ended and they made their way off the set, Sarah and Emily were approached by a young woman, her eyes brimming with tears. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, her voice shaking slightly, "but I just wanted to thank you. My little sister was diagnosed with leukemia last year, and she's been part of the Full Circle program in our state. It's made all the difference. You've given her hope when she needed it most." Sarah and Emily exchanged a glance, both feeling the weight and the wonder of the moment. This was why they did what they did. This was what it was all about. In the months that followed, as their book hit the shelves and Full Circle continued to expand, Sarah often found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. From the fear and pain of her cancer diagnosis to the joy and purpose she now felt every day. It had been a path full of unexpected turns and profound discoveries. One crisp autumn evening, almost 3 years to the day since she had first donated her hair, Sarah stood on her balcony once again. But this time, she wasn't alone. Dr. Chun, Michael, as she now called him, stood beside her, his arm wrapped comfortably around her waist. "Penny, for your thoughts?" he asked, noticing her contemplative expression. Sarah smiled, leaning into his embrace. "I was just thinking about how much has changed." "How much I've changed?" Michael nodded, understanding in his eyes. "You've been through so much, achieved so much." "We all have," Sarah corrected gently. "You, me, Emily, everyone involved in Full Circle. It's been a group effort from the start." As they stood there, watching the sun set over the city, Sarah felt a sense of peace and rightness settle over her. This journey, from cancer patient to survivor to mentor to author, had been challenging, often painful, but ultimately transformative. She thought of Emily, now in college and thriving, still an integral part of Full Circle's leadership team. She thought of the thousands of students and families whose lives had been touched by the program. She thought of the book, now a bestseller, spreading their message of hope and connection to readers around the world. And she thought of herself, the woman she had become through it all. Stronger, yes, but also more compassionate, more open to the beauty and possibility in every moment. As the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, Sarah made a silent promise to herself and to all those whose lives intertwined with hers through Full Circle, to keep growing, keep connecting, keep spreading hope, because she knew now, more than ever, that even the smallest act of kindness could set in motion a chain of events that could change the world. The journey that had begun with a simple act of hair donation had come full circle, but it was far from over. In fact, Sarah realized it was just beginning. There were more lives to touch, more connections to foster, more hope to spread. And as she stood there, wrapped in Michael's embrace, with the city spread out before her like a tapestry of endless possibilities, Sarah felt ready for whatever the next chapter might bring, because she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would face them with an open heart, a resilient spirit, and a community of support that stretched far beyond anything she could have imagined. The story of Full Circle, her story, Emily's story, the story of every person whose life had been touched by their work, was a testament to the power of human connection, to the strength we find in each other, and to the incredible things that can happen when we choose hope over fear, love over isolation. As night fell and the city lights began to twinkle like earthbound stars, Sarah took a deep breath, feeling a sense of anticipation for the future. Whatever came next, she was ready to keep learning, growing, and making a difference, one connection at a time. And in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of love and the glow of purpose, Sarah knew that this life she had fought for, this community she had helped build, this endless cycle of giving and receiving support, this was the truest, most beautiful form of coming full circle. If you enjoyed this story, we'd love for you to support us by leaving a like and subscribing to our Slices of Life channel. We'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Which city are you talking about? It's very rewarding for us to provide our followers with an enjoyable moment. We appreciate the unconditional support you show us in every story. Blessings!